Penguin Random House Audio presents The Soul of America, The Battle for Our Better Angels, by Jon Meacham. Read for you by Fred Sanders, with an introduction and conclusion read by the author.
To Evan Thomas and Michael Beschloss. History, as nearly no one seems to know, is not merely something to be read, and it does not refer merely, or even principally, to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and history is literally present in all that we do. James Baldwin. The presidency is not merely an administrative office. That's the least of it. It is more than an engineering job, efficient or inefficient. It is preeminently a place of moral leadership. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Nothing makes a man come to grips more directly with his conscience than the presidency. The burden of his responsibility literally opens up his soul. No longer can he accept matters as given. No longer can he write off hopes and needs as impossible. Lyndon B. Johnson. Introduction. To hope rather than to fear. Back of the writhing, yelling, cruel-eyed demons who break, destroy, maim, and lynch and burn at the stake is a knot, large or small, of normal human beings. And these human beings at heart are desperately afraid of something. Of what? Of many things, but usually of losing their jobs, being declassed, degraded, or actually disgraced. Of losing their hopes, their savings, their plans for their children. Of the actual pangs of hunger, of dirt, of crime. W.E.B. Du Bois, Black Reconstruction in America, 1935. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Abraham Lincoln, First Inaugural Address, 1861. The fate of America, or at least of white America, which was the only America that seemed to count, was at stake. On the autumn evening of Thursday, October 7th, 1948, South Carolina Governor Strom Thurmond, the segregationist Dixiecrat candidate for President of the United States, addressed a crowd of 1,000 inside the University of Virginia's Cabell Hall in Charlottesville. The subject at hand, President Harry S. Truman's Civil Rights Program, one that included anti-lynching legislation and protections against racial discrimination in hiring. Thurmond was having none of it. Such measures, he thundered, would undermine the American way of life and outrage the Bill of Rights. Interrupted by applause and standing ovations, Thurmond, who had bolted the Democratic National Convention in July to form the States' Rights Democratic Party, was in his element in the old Confederacy. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Thurmond had said in accepting the Breakaway Party's nomination in Birmingham, Alabama, that there's not enough troops in the Army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, into our churches. The message was clear. He and his fellow Dixiecrats, he told the University of Virginia crowd, offered the only genuine obstacle to the rise of socialism or communism in America. Civil rights, Thurmond declared, were a red plot against the free world. Only the states' rights Democrats, and we alone, have the moral courage to stand up to the communists and tell them this foreign doctrine will not work in free America. Nearly 70 years on, in the heat of a Virginia August in 2017, heirs to the Dixiecrats' platform of white supremacy, 21st century Klansmen and neo-Nazis among them, gathered in Charlottesville, not far from where Thurmond had taken his stand. The story is depressingly well known. A young counter-protester, Heather Heyer, was killed. 2 Virginia state troopers died in a helicopter crash as part of an operation to maintain order. And the President of the United States, himself an heir to the white populist tradition of Thurman and of Alabama's George Wallace, said that there had been an egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides, as if there were more than one side to a conflict between neo-Nazis who idolized Adolf Hitler and Americans who stood against Ku Klux Klansmen and white nationalists. The remarks were of a piece with the incumbent president's divisive language on immigration, among many other subjects, from political foes to women, and his nationalist rhetoric. Extremism, racism, nativism, and isolationism, driven by fear of the unknown, tend to spike in periods of economic and social stress, a period like our own. Americans today have little trust in government. Household incomes lag behind our usual middle-class expectations. The fires of fear in America have long found oxygen when broad, seemingly threatening change is afoot. Now, in the second decade of the new century, in the presidency of Donald Trump, the alienated are being mobilized afresh by changing demography, by broadening conceptions of identity, and by an economy that prizes information-age brains over manufacturing brawn. We are determined to take our country back. David Duke, a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, said in Charlottesville, "We are going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump. Because he said he's going to take our country back. And that's what we gotta do." For many, the fact that we have arrived at a place in the life of the nation where a Grand Wizard of the KKK can claim all too plausibly that he is at one with the will of the President of the United States seems an unprecedented moment. History, however, shows us that we are frequently vulnerable to fear, bitterness, and strife. The good news is that we have come through such darkness before. This book is a portrait of ours in which the politics of fear were prevalent, a reminder that periods of public dispiritedness are not new, and a reassurance that they are survivable. In the best of moments, witness, protest, and resistance can intersect with the leadership of an American president to lift us to higher ground. In darker times, if a particular president fails to advance the national story, or worse, moves us backward, then those who witness, protest, and resist must stand fast in hope, working toward a better day. Progress in American life, as we will see, has been slow, painful, bloody, and tragic. Across too many generations, women, African Americans, immigrants, and others have been denied the full promise of Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. Yet the journey has gone on and proceeds even now. There's a natural tendency in American political life to think that things were always better in the past. The passions of previous years fade, to be inevitably replaced by the passions of the present. Nostalgia is a powerful force, and in the maelstrom of the moment, many of us seek comfort in imagining that once there was a Camelot, without quite remembering that the Arthurian legend itself was about a court riven by ambition and infidelity.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?